My sister ruined my relationship out of jealousy for a man she couldn't have, so I made sure she watched as he fell in love with me instead. The human heart is a fragile, complicated thing. It can be a sanctuary of immense love or a breeding ground for bottomless spite. My sister, Mia, decided a long time ago that since her heart was broken, she had a divine right to shatter everyone else's. She turned her pain into a weapon, and her excuse was a man she called her one true love. I don't mean she was just hung up on an ex in the way people normally are. Sad, nostalgic, maybe a little bitter. No. Mia's fixation was a foundational myth for her own cruelty. It was her origin story for being a piece of work, as I'd once bitterly joked to my best friend. The villain's justification, recited so often I think our family started to believe it. The fabled one true love was a guy named Ethan. They'd met at a college party 4 years ago. A single night, a hookup fueled by cheap beer and loud music. He never called. For most people, this would be a blip, a story to cringe at or laugh about later. For Mia, it was a cosmic tragedy. That one night became the benchmark against which all other connections were measured and found wanting. It became the reason, the only reason, why she was entitled to burn every happy relationship she encountered to the ground. It started with Jess, her best friend since kindergarten. Their bond was the stuff of family legend, matching friendship bracelets, summers spent in treehouses, secrets whispered in the dark. Then Jess started dating Mark. He was sweet, devoted to her. Mia's smile became strained whenever his name was mentioned. One weekend, Mia stayed over at Jess's apartment, claiming she was feeling low. By Monday, Mark was sending Mia good morning texts. When Jess came home early from a work trip, she found them in her own bed, the sheets a tangled testament to betrayal. Mia didn't look guilty. She looked vindicated. As Jess stood there, her world crumbling, Mia had the audacity to whisper, her voice thick with faux sorrow, "You don't understand what it's like to lose your soulmate. You just don't understand the emptiness." Jess, understandably, never spoke to her again. My parents' reaction? They told Mia she needed to be more careful with her big heart. They coddled her, as if she were the victim of her own actions. Then came our cousin Sarah's engagement party. Mia showed up in a crimson dress that cost more than my monthly rent, a deliberate splash of blood in a sea of pastel celebration. She got spectacularly, performatively wine-drunk and cornered the groom, David, in the hallway outside the bathroom. He was a good man, solid and honest. Later, he told his fiancée, his voice shaking with disgust. She kept saying I reminded her of someone special. She kept touching my arm, saying she could feel the same energy that. Thank God he had the integrity to physically push her away and immediately find Sarah. The party ended in tears and shouting. And Mia, she cried to our parents, sobbing about how seeing happy couples triggered her trauma. My mother, ever the enabler, bought her a spa weekend to help her heal. The message was clear. Mia's pain, however self-manufactured, was more important than anyone else's reality. By the time I met Ryan, I was an expert in Mia-proofing. It was a sad skill to have, like knowing how to board up windows before a hurricane. I kept him away from family dinners for the first 6 months. I meticulously scrubbed her from my social media, creating a digital fortress she couldn't penetrate. When he asked about her, I gave him the sanitized version. My sister is going through a difficult time. She's fragile. It's best we give her space. For 2 beautiful years it worked. Ryan was my safe harbor. He was charming, ambitious, with a smile that made me feel seen. We built a life together, full of inside jokes and shared dreams. When he proposed last spring, under the old oak tree in the park where we had our first picnic, I felt a sense of security I hadn't known was possible. We planned a small, intimate wedding. Nothing extravagant, just us and the people who truly mattered. I was meticulous, vigilant, but I made one catastrophic mistake. I let my guard down at my mother's birthday dinner. The moment the words, "Ryan and I are engaged," left my lips, Mia's eyes lit up with a terrifying, predatory glee. It was as if Christmas, her birthday, and a lottery win had all arrived at once. She flew out of her chair, enveloping me in a hug that felt more like a straitjacket. "I'm so happy for you," she squealed, her voice dripping with a saccharine falseness that made my skin crawl. "When do I finally get to meet this amazing man properly?" A cold dread settled in my stomach. The hurricane had its coordinates. A week later, Ryan was chuckling as he scrolled through his phone. "Babe, come look at this. Your sister found me on Instagram. Some fake account called sunshine_gazer_22. My blood ran cold. We sat together on the couch, our shoulders touching, as we read the messages aloud in mocking tones. Sunshine_gazer_22. I know we haven't officially met, but I feel like I know you through my sister. You have such a kind energy. Ryan. Thanks. Sunshine_gazer_22. I have a feeling we'd have a lot to talk about. I'm a really good listener. Sometimes Melissa can be so intense. It must be hard." We laughed at her desperation. A brittle, nervous sound from me. Ryan, ever confident, wrapped an arm around me. "Don't worry, Mel. She's just lonely. It's pathetic." He blocked the account right in front of me. See? Problem solved. I wanted to believe him. I so desperately wanted to believe that my love for him was a stronger force than her poison. 3 weeks before my wedding, the flu hit me like a freight train. It was the kind of illness that leaves you shivering and sweating, barely able to lift your head. Ryan was supposed to be at his brother's all-day golf tournament, a standing family commitment. I was bundled under blankets, drifting in and out of feverish sleep when my phone buzzed. It was my friend, Chloe. "Hey, feeling any better? I'm just around the corner from Mia's complex. Do you want me to bring you some soup? I can be there in 10. I typed back with clumsy fingers. "Thanks, but I'm at home." Not at Mia's. Her response was immediate. 3 blinking dots then. "Are you sure?" I could have sworn I just saw Ryan's Tesla in the visitor spot. The world stopped. The feverish heat in my body was instantly replaced by an arctic cold that started in my chest and spread outwards, freezing my blood, my bones, my breath. It was a cognitive dissonance, so violent it felt physical. Ryan's Tesla. At Mia's. While I was sick. Alone. I don't even remember getting dressed. I moved on autopilot, a ghost driving my own body. The world outside the car windows was a blur. The fever was still there, a dull fire behind my eyes, but it was nothing compared to the ice in my soul. I parked haphazardly outside her apartment building. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely fit the key, the spare she'd given me for emergencies, into the lock. The irony was a sharp, bitter taste in my mouth. I pushed the door open. The apartment was quiet, save for the low hum of the television. And then I saw them. They were on the couch, nestled in the dim afternoon light. Ryan was reclined against the cushions, and Mia was curled up, her head nestled in his lap. His fingers were tangled in her hair, stroking it with a familiarity that stole the air from my lungs. They were both in t-shirts and underwear, their clothes discarded on the floor nearby in a silent narrative of what had transpired. The scene was one of intimate, domestic tranquility. It was a tableau of betrayal, so complete it felt staged. Mia was the first to notice me. Her eyes fluttered open, and instead of shock or guilt, I saw a flicker of something else, triumph. Then on cue, the fake tears welled up, sparkling in the low light. "Melissa," she whispered, her voice a breathy, pathetic thing. "I'm so sorry." Ryan jerked upright, his face a mask of panic and shame. "Mel, it's not what it. He reminds me so much of Ethan," Mia interrupted, her voice breaking on the name as if it were a holy word. "The same soul." I couldn't help myself. You have to understand. I didn't speak. I couldn't. I just looked at Ryan, my fiancé, the man who had promised me a future, and saw a stranger. He didn't try to stop me as I turned and walked out. He didn't run after me. He just let me go. I drove away, the fever and the heartbreak merging into a single, debilitating agony. But amidst the shattered pieces of my life, a new, cold, and terrifyingly clear resolve began to form. She had used the specter of Ethan to destroy my happiness. It was time I made that specter real. Part 2. The Unlikely Alliance. Ethan wasn't a ghost. He was a real person, and I knew exactly how to find him. We'd been following each other on Instagram for 3 years, a connection through mutual college friends. He lived 3 hours away, worked as a physical therapist, and his feed was a wholesome scroll of hiking trails, his goofy golden retriever, Buddy, and motivational quotes about health. He was handsome in a clean-cut, unassuming way, The kind of man who looked like he'd remember your birthday and know how to fix a leaky faucet. 4 years, he was just a name, a face on a screen. Now, he was the key to my revenge. Sitting in my dark apartment, surrounded by the discarded remnants of my wedding planning, a veil draped over a chair, sample invitations on the table, I opened our DM thread. It was empty. Taking a deep, shuddering breath, I typed out a message that was either the most unhinged or brilliant thing I'd ever done. Hey, this is going to sound insane. I'm Melissa, Mia's sister. You hooked up with her at a party years ago. She's built this whole one true love myth around you, and she just used that delusion to seduce and destroy my engagement 3 weeks before my wedding. I am done. Want to help me ruin her life? I put the phone face down, my heart hammering against my ribs. I expected nothing. Or a block. Or a call to the police. My phone buzzed 12 minutes later. Mia, the girl who showed up at my mom's house last fall. I'm in. My breath caught. His mom's house. He sent a follow-up message. A screenshot of a post from his mother's Facebook page. There was Mia, her head tilted sweetly against his mother's shoulder, holding a teacup. The caption read, "Reuniting with my dear future mother-in-law. So lovely to finally connect." 2 hearts. A fresh wave of nausea washed over me. Her obsession wasn't passive, it was invasive, stalking. Ethan didn't stop there. Over the next hour, he sent me a digital dossier of her insanity. Screenshots of messages she'd sent to his friends, asking about his schedule. A video, taken covertly by a concerned neighbor, of Mia sitting in her car outside his gym. And the most chilling piece, an audio file his mother had sent him. "Ethan, dear," his mother's gentle voice said, full of concern, "that lovely Mia girl stopped by again. She brought me flowers. She told me the most heartbreaking story about how the 2 of you were kept apart by bad timing and family pressure. She seemed so sincere, dear. I'm sorry if I meddled and caused any problems." That was the moment I truly understood. Mia didn't love. She possessed. And what she couldn't possess, she sought to destroy. But this time, she had miscalculated. She hadn't counted on my breaking point. And she hadn't counted on Ethan being not a passive fantasy, but a willing and frankly pissed off participant. We became digital co-conspirators. We planned our move with the strategic precision of generals. The battlefield would be my parents' house for my father's birthday lunch. I hadn't spoken to Mia since the couch incident, but I knew she'd be there, performing the role of the dutiful, if slightly wounded daughter. Ethan took the bus into town on Friday. When I picked him up at the station, the first thing that struck me was how solid he was. His online photos didn't do him justice. He had a calm, grounded presence, a gentle strength in his handshake, and a keen intelligence in his eyes. He was charismatic, yes, but it was a quiet charisma that drew you in rather than bowling you over. In the car, it was like we were rehearsing for a play. "Okay, so we'll hold hands when we walk in," I instructed, my voice tight with nerves. "Got it. And I'll pull your chair out for you," he said, nodding. Small, old-fashioned gestures. They read as protective and intimate. Right. And we need to have a couple of shared anecdotes ready. Something simple, like how we bonded over a love for terrible 90s rock. He smiled, a genuine, easy smile. "We actually do have that in common, according to your Summer Throwbacks playlist." I blinked, surprised. He'd done his homework. This wasn't just a game to him. He was invested. The next day, at 1 p.m. on the dot, we parked in front of my parents' house. My heart was a wild drum against my ribs. I was wearing a new dress, a bold crimson that was a declaration of war, and a smile that felt carved from ice. Ethan took my hand, his grip warm and reassuringly firm. "Ready?" he asked, his voice low. "Let's give her a performance she'll never forget," I replied. We walked in. The house was filled with the familiar sounds of family gatherings, clattering dishes, overlapping conversations, laughter. Mia was holding court in the living room, laughing too loudly at something my uncle said. Then her eyes landed on us. The sound died in her throat. Her smile didn't just fade, it collapsed. "Everyone," I announced, my voice ringing with a confidence I didn't fully feel. "This is Ethan." The name landed in the room with the force of a physical blow. I saw it ripple through my family. Aunts and uncles looked up, curious. My mother froze, a plate in her hand. My father looked confused. But Mia was the main event. She went sheet white, the color draining from her face so rapidly I thought she might faint. Then, a blotchy, ugly red flush crept up her neck. She forced her lips into a rictus grin. "Ethan," she managed to choke out, forcing an awkward, tinkling laugh. "Wow, what a small world." Ethan smiled, a picture of polite detachment. "Hi, Mia. Good to see you again." The phrase, "good to see you again," was a masterstroke. It was normal, utterly banal, but the context made it a weapon. It acknowledged their non-existent history and dismissed it in the same breath. It shattered the epic romance she had constructed and reduced it to a casual acquaintance. I saw the fracture in her eyes. The control she so carefully cultivated was crumbling. She stammered something unintelligible, but I was already leading Ethan to the sofa, sitting so close our thighs touched. I took out my phone, snapping a selfie of the two of us, my head leaning against his shoulder. I posted it to my story immediately. Family time with my favorite person. Red heart. Every move was a calculated cut. Every laugh I let out was a twist of the knife. During lunch, she tried to regain footing. "Ethan," she said, her voice saccharine, "do you remember that college party? The one at Sigma Chi." The music was so loud. Ethan chewed his food thoughtfully, then looked at me, his eyes full of a warmth that seemed terrifyingly real. "You know, I don't really. That whole semester is a blur. But I do remember the first time Mel told me that story about you two, trying to build a fort out of your parents' good linen." He squeezed my shoulder. The image of you two as tiny architects was the cutest thing I'd ever heard. He hadn't just deflected. He had redirected the focus onto a real memory of us as sisters, a memory he knew only through me, reinforcing our bond and his connection to my world. He called me love. He put his arm around my shoulders, his thumb drawing absent, comforting circles on my skin. And with every touch, every shared glance, Mia pressed her lips together so tightly they disappeared, as if she were swallowing shards of her own shattered fantasy. After the birthday toast, she finally broke. She mumbled an excuse and fled to the downstairs bathroom, locking the door with an audible click. I gave it a moment. Let her stew. Then I followed. I knocked firmly. "Mia, you okay in there?" A choke sob. Then the lock turned, and the door opened a crack. Her makeup was a ruined watercolor of tears and smudged mascara. "What do you want?" she hissed, her voice raw. "Just came to see if you're okay," I said, layering my voice with a thick, fake concern. "After all, it must be hard, seeing your soulmate in your sister's arms." Her eyes widened with pure, undiluted venom. "You're doing this just to hurt me. And you destroyed my engagement just because you couldn't stand to see me happy. So no, Mia, this isn't me hurting you. This is justice." "He was mine," she screamed, her composure vaporizing. She slammed her fist against the tiled wall, the sound echoing in the small room. "I saw him first. I felt it first." "No, Mia," I said, my voice dropping to a deadly calm. "You saw him once. He never wanted you. You invented a love story in your head and used it as an excuse to be cruel to everyone around you. But now, you're going to sit there and watch him love me. Because unlike you, I didn't have to beg." She collapsed onto the cold bathroom floor, her body racked with loud, ugly sobs. It was the sound of a tantrum, not a heartbreak. My mother appeared at the end of the hall. "Girls, is everything all right in there?" I opened the door fully, stepping out into the hallway. I didn't look back at the weeping heap on the floor. I walked out with my head held high, back to the living room, back to Ethan. He made space for me on the couch, his arm immediately encircling me. He leaned in, his lips brushing my forehead in a whisper of a kiss. "She's going to lose it even more now," he murmured against my skin, his voice for my ears only. "Are you ready for the next act?" I looked into his calm, determined eyes and felt a surge of power. I've never been more ready. Part 3. The War of Perception. The fallout was swift and predictable. My mother called me early the next morning, her voice heavy with passive aggression disguised as concern. "Melissa, honey, we need to have a little empathy for your sister," she began. "She spent the entire night crying. She's very fragile. You should have avoided provoking her like that." "Provoking?" I let out a humorless laugh. You think showing up with my boyfriend at a family gathering is provoking? Or is it that Mia simply can't stand to see anyone happy without her being the center of attention? She sighed, the long-suffering sigh I knew so well. It was the sound of her choosing the path of least resistance, which always led to enabling Mia. Honey, your sister has a sensitive heart. She gets attached so easily. Sensitive. I interrupted, my patience snapping. Mom, she slept with my fiancé. She was lying half-dressed with him on her couch while I was at home with a fever. She was thinking of Ethan. Are you seriously trying to flip this around? Let's just talk another day, Melissa. When you're calmer. And she hung up. The click of the phone was the sound of a final door closing. I realized then that in the family theater, I would always be cast as the unreasonable one, the difficult daughter, if I dared to challenge the narrative that painted Mia as the perpetual victim. But I wasn't playing for their approval anymore. I was playing for the audience outside the family. On Monday, Ethan was still in town. I took him to a brunch with my inner circle, the friends who had seen Mia's antics since high school, who had witnessed the trail of broken friendships and manipulated boys. He was a showstopper. He listened intently, asked thoughtful questions, and his devotion to me was a palpable, quiet force. He wasn't performative, he was present. He'd rest his hand on the small of my back, refill my mimosa glass before I asked, and his gaze would constantly find mine, solid and sure. My friends were enchanted. I saw the exchanged glances, the raised eyebrows, the whispered comments I was meant to hear. God, if this is revenge, sign me up. He's unreal. Is he even real? The real masterstroke came in the afternoon. Ethan posted a photo of us on his Instagram. It was a simple, sun-drenched picture of us hugging in the park, my face tucked into his shoulder, his cheek resting on my head. The caption was effortless. Sometimes love appears when you least expect it. Grateful. Red heart. The comments began innocuously. Heart emojis from his friends. You two look great, from a cousin. Then Mia arrived. Her comment was a sledgehammer of desperation at Kamaya. Soul, this is disgusting. You know what he means to me. Ethan didn't delete it. He didn't ignore it. He liked her comment, a move of such devastating nonchalance it was brutal. Then he replied, his words a surgical strike. We hooked up once, Mia. Once. And you followed me to my car the next day, and then showed up at my mom's house 6 months later. That's not love. It's obsession. The digital silence that followed was deafening, then the dam broke. The post became a wildfire in our social circles. People who had known Mia for years, who had always found her Ethan's story strange, felt validated. Finally, someone said it. I always thought the way she talked about you was unhinged. Glad you called it. Karma is a queen. Mia went radio silent on the post, but my WhatsApp exploded. A torrent of voice messages, each one more unhinged than the last. Sobbing, screaming, pleading. How could you do this to me? My own sister. You're using him. You're using my pain against me. You're destroying my life for revenge. I listened to them all, a strange detachment settling over me. Her pain wasn't for a lost love, it was for a shattered illusion and a publicly humiliated ego. I typed out a single, calm response. No, Mia, I'm just showing you how to rebuild a life after someone destroys it. Something you never learned how to do. And then, with a sense of profound finality, I blocked her number. But I knew her. The silence wouldn't last. She was a performer, and the show must go on. On Thursday night, the notification came. A new post on her Instagram. It was a masterpiece of victimhood. A selfie taken in her dimly lit bedroom. Her eyes were puffy and red-rimmed, her face splotchy. She was looking just past the camera, a single, perfect tear tracing a path down her cheek. The caption was a novel of self-pity. It's so hard when the person you trust most becomes the person who hurts you the most. To see your sister deliberately steal the man you love, laugh at your pain, and be applauded for it. I'm not perfect. I know I've made mistakes. But no one deserves this level of cruelty. My heart is shattered. Please, just send good vibes. #heartbroken, #family betrayal, #be kind. It garnered over 1,000 likes. A chorus of comments flooded in. Stay strong, queen. You deserve the world. Sending you so much love. And the knife in my heart. Several people I considered friends reposted it on their stories with captions like, "Protect this angel at all costs." The war of perception was in full swing, and she was winning from her bedroom. The next morning, I drove to my parents' house. I didn't call ahead. My mother answered the door, her face a mask of surprise and apprehension. "Melissa, what are you doing here?" "I came to talk. With everyone." I brushed past her and walked into the living room. My dad was in his armchair reading the paper. A moment later, Mia descended the stairs like a grieving widow, dressed in gray sweatpants, her hair in a messy bun, her face scrubbed clean of makeup to enhance though I'm suffering aesthetic. Did something happen?" she asked, her voice a fragile whisper. "Something did happen," I said, my voice cutting through the quiet room. "Enough of you manipulating everyone and coming out smelling like a rose. Enough of you playing the victim." I stood in the center of the living room, turning my gaze from my mother's worried face to my father's confused one. "Mom, Dad, did you see her post? Do you honestly think that's fair? Do you remember who destroyed whose engagement? Who was found with whose fiancé? Melissa, this isn't the way to solve." My mother tried, her voice placating. "No," I snapped, the word cracking like a whip. "Now you're going to listen." I turned to Mia, my gaze unwavering. "You seduced Ryan. You stabbed me in the back. You said you were sorry with fake tears and thought you could just continue being the family's precious, broken princess. But the tables have turned. Now you're the one on the ground crying, and no one is going to save you this time. Because a sad post with a filter isn't going to erase the screenshots, the voice messages, the testimony. Everyone has seen who you really are. The mask has fallen, Mia." She stood there, silent tears streaming down her face. But they weren't the angry, frustrated tears from the bathroom. These were the tears of someone who knew her usual script wasn't working. My father looked down at his hands, a deep shame on his face. He was finally seeing it. "I am tired," I said, my voice dropping but losing none of its intensity, "of being the forgotten daughter while you put on your little performances for a captive audience. It's enough. The stage is mine now. And the audience, they're on my side." I turned and walked out, not waiting for a reply, not waiting for an apology that would never come. I had said my piece. In the car, Ethan was waiting in the driver's seat. The radio was playing a soft rock song, and a steaming coffee was waiting for me in the cup holder. "So," he asked, his eyes searching my face. I let out a long, slow breath, the adrenaline finally receding. It was cathartic. She finally saw that she has no control over this narrative anymore. He smiled, a genuine, warm smile. You know, getting revenge on her was more therapeutic than I imagined. "Yeah," I said, taking a sip of the coffee. "It was perfect. And you know what's even better?" "What?" "Part 2 is still coming. Part 4, the grand finale and the new beginning." Part 2 began with an invitation. The launch party for my friend Andre's new restaurant. He was a rising chef, and the event was buzzy, filled with local influencers and social media coverage. It was exactly the kind of event Mia lived for, a chance to curate an illusion of a glamorous life she didn't lead. She'd post photos in store mirrors pretending the clothes were hers, order expensive meals, just to photograph them, and then return them uneaten. Appearances were her currency. But this time, her name wasn't on the list. Mine was. And Ethan's. We arrived hand in hand. The entrance photographer stopped us, and one of the pictures ended up on the city's premier events blog with the caption, "Couple of the moment. Melissa and Ethan steal the scene at the opening night." Mia saw it, of course. Her Instagram story the next day was a classic bait booking indirect. Some people need the spotlight to feel alive. I prefer depth and authenticity. Depth. From the girl who tried to steal my fiancé because he reminded her of a guy she slept with once. The hypocrisy was staggering. The following Saturday was our cousin Amanda's wedding. Mia had always been close to her, and I was sure she'd pressured Amanda to disinvite me or, at the very least, ask me not to bring Ethan. Instead, Amanda called me personally. "Mel, please come. And bring him. Everyone knows what happened now, and frankly, I don't have the patience to pretend with Mia anymore. She needs to learn that the world doesn't revolve around her drama." The vindication was sweet. Mia was there alone, in a dress that was a little too tight, her makeup flawless, a plastic smile plastered on her face. She pretended not to see us when we walked in. Ethan kept his arm firmly around my waist, his presence a constant, quiet declaration. He'd kiss my temple, whisper in my ear, and all she could do was watch from her solitary corner. But the pinnacle of the night came during the bride and groom's first dance. As the sweet melody filled the room, Amanda, with a subtle glance in our direction, gestured for us to join them on the edge of the dance floor. It was a silent, powerful show of solidarity. Ethan took my hand and led me into a slow dance, his arms a secure circle around me. That's when Mia broke. She strode across the floor, her heels clicking like gunshots on the parquet, her smile gone, replaced by a raw, desperate determination. "Ethan," she said, her voice trembling, her eyes wide and pleading. "Can I please talk to you? Just for a minute." He didn't let go of me. He simply turned his head, his expression calm but firm. "No, Mia. I'm busy." He paused, letting the silence hang for a beat, then deliver the line that would echo in our family lore for years. "I'm busy loving your sister." It was a rejection so complete, so absolute, it was almost merciful in its finality. Mia froze, her face a canvas of shattered pride and bewildered hurt. The persona of the desirable, heartbroken heroine crumbled to dust right there. I took a slow breath, meeting her devastated gaze. "And for the first time in years," I added, my voice soft but clear, "I'm being truly loved. Something you never understood, because you only know how to confuse attention with love." She took 2 stumbling steps back, as if my words had physically pushed her. Her heel caught on the hem of her own dress, and she nearly fell, catching herself on a nearby chair. No one laughed. The silence was worse. A few people glanced her way, then quickly looked away, a collective, uncomfortable dismissal. The invisibility she had inflicted on others was now her own. She fled the hall a few minutes later, and I kept dancing. For the first time since walking in on them on that couch, I felt a weight lift. I wasn't just winning a battle, I was reclaiming my life. But my favorite act was still to come. A few weeks later, I was invited to speak on a popular podcast about overcoming betrayal and finding new beginnings. I didn't use names, but I told the story. The narcissistic sister, the weak-willed fiancé, the calculated revenge, and the unexpected, genuine love that bloomed in the ashes. The episode went viral. Messages poured in from all over the country from people who saw their own toxic family members in my story, congratulating me on my strength. Mia listened. I knew she did, because a DM arrived that same day from a burner account. "Do you really need to humiliate yourself and our family like this just for external validation?" I replied without a moment's hesitation. "It's not humiliation. It's liberation. I lived for years as a side character in your theater. Now the story is mine and so is the stage." She never replied. In the following days, I learned through the grapevine that Mia was becoming a recluse. A few small local brands she was trying to partner with as an influencer quietly cut ties. The whispers about her obsession with Ethan grew louder, no longer a romantic tragedy, but a cautionary tale. The reputation she had so carefully constructed with filters and carefully crafted captions was crumbling. And the beautiful, poetic justice was that I wasn't the one tearing it down. She was sinking herself with the weight of her own lies. And me, I kept living. Somewhere in the middle of all that chaos, a profound shift occurred. Ethan was no longer just a piece in my game of revenge. The truth was, in the middle of all that carefully orchestrated performance, something terrifyingly real had taken root. The first time I realized I wasn't thinking about Ryan anymore was on an ordinary Tuesday morning, weeks after Amanda's wedding. We were in my apartment. Sunlight streamed through the window, painting golden stripes on the floor. Ethan was in the kitchen, shirtless, humming a off-key rendition of a 2000s pop song while doing a ridiculous little dance as he flipped pancakes. The sight of him, so unself-conscious, so utterly at home, made a laugh bubble up from my chest, a sound of pure, unadulterated joy. And in that moment, I realized Ryan was nothing more than a faint, unimportant shadow in the far corners of my memory. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was the way Ethan held my hand when we walked through the grocery store, even when we didn't need to. It was the way he listened, truly listened. When I talked about my childhood, his eyes focused and warm, even though he'd heard the stories before. It was the way he looked at me, while I was reading on the couch, as if I were the most fascinating story he'd ever encountered. I hadn't expected this. When I sent that impulsive DM, I thought it would be a temporary alliance, a bit of theatrical payback until Mia slunk away in defeat. But life didn't return to normal. It transformed. Ethan became my routine. He was present, security, home. He met my friends and they became our friends. He left a toothbrush and a stack of t-shirts at my apartment. When my car broke down, he was the one who showed up with a thermos of coffee and called the tow truck. When I had a panic attack before a big presentation at work, he didn't try to fix it. He just sat with me on the kitchen floor, his back against the cabinets, and held my hand until my breathing slowed and the world came back into focus. Ryan was made of grand, future promises. Ethan was built of quiet, present actions. One night, we went to a casual, nothing special dinner at a new neighborhood bistro. As we sat down, he reached across the table and took my hand, his thumb stroking my knuckles. "You know what's funny?" he said, a playful light in his eyes. "We started all this to fool your sister. But I want you to know, I never pretended a single thing with you." My heart stuttered, then swelled in my chest. I was silent for a moment, letting his words sink in. "I'm not pretending anymore either," I finally replied, a shy, genuine smile spreading across my face. He laughed, a warm, happy sound, and raised his glass of wine. "To the best revenge, then?" I shook my head, my smile widening. "No, to what comes after revenge." We toasted, and for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I was truly, deeply at peace. There was no lingering resentment, no haunting ghost of my past, no desperate need for anyone's validation. I was there for myself, and so was he. A few days later, walking downtown, I saw Ryan. He was alone, his shoulders slumped, his head down as if carrying the weight of the world. My gaze passed over him automatically, not out of pain or anger, but simple, profound indifference. He saw me, hesitated, and took a half step forward as if to speak. But then he noticed Ethan approaching, saw him naturally intertwine his fingers with mine, and he stopped. He backed away, melting into the crowd. Maybe he finally understood. The space he had vacated with his betrayal was now filled, permanently, by someone who, without ever making a single promise, had given me everything. That night, I curled into Ethan's side on the couch, the familiar weight of his arm around me a comfort I no longer took for granted. "Thank you," I whispered into the quiet of the room. He looked down at me, his calm smile saying everything his words didn't need to. And I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that revenge had given me a sense of justice. But it was the after that had given me love. Part 5, the aftermath and the apologies. Months drifted by, and the sharp, burning need for retribution softened, replaced by the sweet, steady rhythm of a life built on truth. What had begun as a weapon against my sister's poison had become the most authentic part of my world. Ethan was no longer a plan, a move in a chess game. He was my partner, my home in the quiet moments and the loud ones. He officially asked me to be his girlfriend one unremarkable evening. We were on my couch, a pizza box balanced between us, watching a ridiculous documentary about deep-sea creatures. "So," he said, picking a piece of pepperoni off his slice, "do you think it's too early for this? Or, given our unique courtship, is it already too late?" A smile played on his lips. I laughed, leaning my head against his shoulder. "I think we've already been through more than most couples who've been together for 20 years. It's just a title." "But yes," I said, looking up at him. "Yes, I want to." And that was that. It was simple. Real. We stopped talking about Mia altogether. She became a ghost in our conversations, a specter whose power had finally faded. She blocked Ethan on every platform, and we heard through the family gossip mill that she had told acquaintances she would never forgive me for stealing the love of her life. There was never any acknowledgement of the fiancé she had stolen from me first. The lack of self-awareness was breathtaking. But the most surprising thing? I found I didn't care. The burning need for her to admit her guilt, to fall to her knees and beg for forgiveness, had simply evaporated. The freedom I found in releasing that desire was the greatest gift the entire ordeal gave me. She didn't come to my birthday. She ignored my mother's messages about Christmas plans. She stayed away, nursing her wounds and her resentment. And I lived. I traveled with Ethan to the countryside and officially met his mother, a kind, flustered woman who hugged me tightly and whispered, "I'm so glad he found you." I helped him paint the walls of the new clinic he opened, getting more paint on my clothes than on the drywall. I learned to love the chaotic, shedding presence of his golden retriever, Buddy. We built a life that was light, honest, and unburdened by performance. We were lying in a hammock in his backyard one lazy Sunday, the dappled sunlight filtering through the leaves, the only sounds the wind chimes and Buddy's contented snores. "Do you still think all of this was just revenge?" Ethan asked, his voice a soft rumble against my ear. I thought for a long moment, watching the leaves dance above us. "Maybe it started that way," I said finally, "but it ended up being the best thing I ever did for myself." He kissed my forehead, and we lapsed into a comfortable silence. The irony was perfect. Revenge had become love, and that, I knew, was what would hurt me the most. She had always craved the spotlight, to be the most desired, the most worthy of a grand romance. But it was off stage, in the quiet, unscripted moments, that I had found everything she had ever pretended to have. I was never the family's golden child. I was never the most loved sister. But I was the one who had learned how to alchemize pain into strength, rejection into freedom, and a plan for vengeance into a lifetime of love. And that was a victory no one could ever take from me. Just when I thought the last of the storms had passed, an unexpected call came 6 months later. Ryan. His name flashed on my screen, a relic from a past life. I didn't answer. He called again, and again. On the third call, Ethan was sitting beside me reading. He looked at the phone, then at me. "Answer it, Mel," he said gently. "I think you need to close this cycle for yourself." I took a deep breath and swiped to answer. "Hello, Melissa? It's me." His voice was ragged, tired. Can I talk to you? In person?" I was about to refuse, but Ethan's calm gaze held mine. He was right. There were questions that needed answers. We arranged to meet at a generic cafe downtown, a place with no history for either of us. He was already there when I arrived, looking like a faded photograph of his former self. His hair was unkempt, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. He seemed to have aged a decade. "Thanks for coming," he mumbled, not meeting my gaze. "What do you want, Ryan?" He let out a heavy sigh. "I wanted to apologize and explain." "Explain what?" "That you were cuddling with my sister 3 weeks before our wedding." "It wasn't like that," he said, his voice low and desperate. She came to me when you were sick. She said she needed to talk about something important about you. That there were things from your past I needed to know before I married you." I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. Of course. The classic Mia maneuver. "And you believed her?" "She had evidence. Or things that looked like evidence. She said you had ruined some girl's life in high school, that you were vindictive, manipulative. She showed me old conversations, taken out of context, messages that seemed convincing." He finally looked at me, his eyes full of a pained confusion. I got scared. I was confused. And then she said she'd been in love with me since the day we met. That she just hadn't said anything out of respect for you. That if I called off the wedding, she would be there for me. He ran a hand through his hair. "I was drinking. I was so twisted up by everything she'd said about you." "Ryan," I interrupted, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "None of that justifies what you did." "I know," he whispered, tears welling in his eyes. "I know that. About 5 minutes after you walked out, it all clicked. I realized she had manipulated me, that it was all lies, that I had destroyed the best thing in my life because of her." We sat in silence for a long moment. The clatter of the cafe around us seemed miles away. "You know what hurts the most, Ryan?" I said finally. "It's not even the betrayal. It's that after 2 years together, you trusted the words of a virtual stranger over the person you claimed you wanted to spend your life with." He hung his head. "I tried to call you. 1,000 times. I went to your house, but you were never there. And then I started seeing the photos. With him. And I knew it was too late. It was too late the moment you put your hand in her hair," I said, standing up. The conversation was over. The closure was complete, but thank you for the explanation. It helps me be sure I made the right choice. He looked up at me, a final, pathetic hope in his eyes. Are you happy with him? I smiled then, a real, effortless smile that came from a place of genuine contentment. Happier than I ever thought I could be. I turned and walked away, leaving him and the ghost of our relationship behind. There was no resentment left, just a quiet certainty that some doors must be firmly closed for new, better ones to stay open. The conversation with my family was harder and took longer. 3 months later, my mother called, asking for a lunch, just the two of us. I found a different woman waiting for me at the restaurant. She looked older, the lines on her face etched a little deeper, her eyes holding a new weariness. How are you, Melissa? She asked, her voice hesitant. I'm good, Mom. Really good. And Ethan. He's good too. We're good. She nodded, fidgeting with the edge of her napkin. I need to apologize to you, she said, the words seeming to cost her a great effort. For all the years I didn't see things clearly. Mom, you don't. Please let me talk, she insisted, finally looking me in the eye. I always knew Mia was difficult, but I thought if I gave her more attention, if I protected her more, she would change. That I could love the broken parts of her back together. And in the process, I neglected you. I left you to deal with the fallout of her problems, all on your own. Tears I thought I had long since cried began to stream down my face. After you confronted us that day, she continued, her own voice breaking, I started putting the pieces together. The friends Mia lost, the boyfriends who disappeared, the stories that never quite added up, and I realized that you two had given me very different versions of the same story for years. And I always chose to believe hers. Why? I asked, my voice thick. Because she cried louder, my mother admitted, a tear escaping down her cheek. And because you always seemed so strong, so capable of handling things on your own. And I confused that strength with not needing my support. It was my greatest failure. We sat in the wake of her confession, the air between us clearer than it had been in decades. How is she? I asked quietly. She moved to another state. She's in therapy now. She said she needs to start over, away from all of this. My mother hesitated. She asked me to tell you that she knows she was wrong, but that she can't apologize to you yet. The words, she said, won't come. And I can't forgive her yet, I replied honestly. Maybe someday, but not now. I understand. She reached her hand across the table and I took it. Can I try to be a better mother to you? I held her hand, feeling the familiar texture of her skin, now marked with age. We can try to be a better family, I said, but it's going to take time. She smiled through her tears. I have time. A few weeks after that, my father showed up at my doorstep unannounced. He stood there, a bouquet of slightly wilted flowers in his hand, his face a picture of awkward uncertainty. Can I come in? He asked, his voice gruff. Of course, Dad. Ethan was in the kitchen. He greeted my father with a respectful nod. I'll give you two some space, he said, grabbing his jacket and heading out for a walk with Buddy. I like him, my father said as soon as the door closed. He always was a man of few words, getting straight to the point. Seems like a good man. Solid. He is, I said, smiling. I came here because your mother said you two talked, and I realized I never apologized. He shifted his weight, uncomfortable. I always knew Mia was problematic, but I thought it wasn't my problem. That it was women's business, that your mother would handle it. But in the end, you both suffered. And you especially. Dad! No, Melissa, let me finish. He sat on the edge of the sofa, his back ramrod straight. I failed as a father. I failed to protect you. I failed to correct her. And I failed to teach you both that sisters should be a team, not rivals. He took a deep breath. Your mother told me about Ryan, about what she did to you. He shook his head, a look of deep shame crossing his face. If it were me, I don't know if I could ever forgive. But you found a way to turn all that pain into something good. You built a new life. And I'm proud of you for that. I'm proud of you. They were the words I had waited my entire life to hear. A simple acknowledgement. A shred of validation. It healed a wound I didn't even know was still bleeding. Thank you, Dad, I whispered, my eyes welling up again. He looked at me, his own eyes suspiciously bright. Do you think there's still time for me to be a better father? I walked over and hugged him, feeling his strong, familiar frame. There's always time, Dad. That night, I told Ethan everything. He listened, as he always did, his hand holding mine, his presence a steady anchor. How do you feel? He asked when I was done. I thought about it, about the years of walking on eggshells, the constant comparisons, the feeling of being an afterthought in my own family. Then I thought about the cold fury of revenge, the thrill of the game, and the slow, beautiful thaw into the life I had now. Free, I said, surprised by the truth of it. For the first time in my life, I feel truly free. And about Mia, I hope she finds her peace, I said after a moment of reflection. I genuinely do, but I hope she finds it far away from me. He smiled and kissed my forehead. You're incredible. You know that. We're incredible, I corrected him. And it was the truth. Because in the end, it wasn't about defeating Mia or getting revenge. It was about learning, once and for all, that I deserved to be loved properly, defended fiercely, and respected wholly. It was about discovering that family isn't just the one you're born into, but the one you choose, the one that chooses to stand by you. It was about realizing that sometimes, to find the love of your life, you first have to stop accepting crumbs from those who never truly valued you. And today, as I wake up next to Ethan, with the morning sun painting our room in gold and Buddy snoring softly at our feet, I know that every battle, every tear, every moment of heartbreak was worth it. They all led me here. To him. To us. To peace.